everyone. I hope everyone has started off their summer just wonderfully. We have some amazing guests, and as you can see on the promo that we had sent out, our first two speakers have been here before, I think about 2 years ago. So if you are new with us, this will be the first time that you hear them, but they're going to be returning because when we had them 2 years ago, man therapy was something brand new. It was a brand new project. So we wanted to bring them back on and have them give us an update of how things are going. And then our second speaker is going to be Miss Lacey Singleton from the state of Colorado. And she's going to talk to us about being a sober cowboy. So I am going to stop sharing. And Mandy is here. We're not sure if Monique is going to be able to make it or not. But if not, Mandy is going to do a super fabulous job presenting to us. So Mandy, if you need to share, go ahead and feel free. You should have control to do that. And we'll go ahead and get started today.
Is that coming up as a regular view or presenter view for you guys?
I think it's presenter view because I see full screen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm Mandy Roome. I'm from the Northeast Center for Occupational Health and Safety. My co-presenter, Monique, she had something come up unexpected this morning, so she might not make it. She might hop in a little bit later. She's from the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. So we wanted to talk to you, kind of give you an update for those of you that were here the last time that we gave a talk. We were in the very, very beginning stages of working with a company called Man Therapy. And we'll kind of get into exactly what they do and why we wanted to team up with them. So we wanted to do something for commercial fishermen. Mental health has, of course, mental health care. There's a lot of stigma surrounding that, especially in professions like farming or fishing or forestry. These are the professions we work in. There's a lot of stigma associated with help-seeking behaviors. So we wanted to see what we could do to kind of get these difficult conversations started and get fishermen talking about their mental health. So what we're going to go over today, just kind of a brief overview of Northeast fisheries. So I know I saw somebody in the chat is from Wyoming. So kind of just give you a background of what fishing looks like in the Northeast, and also very, very brief overview of mental health in commercial fisheries, kind of what research has been done. Spoiler alert, not that much, unfortunately. And then I want to talk about the Man Therapy campaign, what we did, show you the finished product, which we did not have last time, and then talk about a web page that we designed as a kind of an add-on, a thing after the outreach campaign to kind of keep things moving and give resources to fishermen that are seeking them. So kind of some background on Northeast fisheries. The commercial fishing industry in the Northeast, most of these operations are run as small businesses. A lot of them are one-man operations, and some do have small crews, maybe one or two crewmen. So between 1 and 3 people on a boat, typically. We do, of course, have some larger offshore fleets in the Northeast, but a huge portion of our fishermen are smaller operations. It's a very dangerous industry, as you would expect. Fishermen are 38 times more likely to die on the job than the average worker. There are a lot of reasons that make commercial fishing very dangerous. So falls overboard are a big concern for the Northeast fishing fleet, and the leading cause of death in the Northeast lobster fleet are from falls overboard. Vessel disasters claim the most lives across all fisheries in the United States. Accidents on deck are also a huge concern due to machinery, slips, trips, and falls. Onshore injuries, again, slips, trips, and falls are very common. And fishermen also face a lot of stress throughout their careers as well. Financial stressors, they don't have any control over their catch prices. There are changing regulations that they have no control over all the time. Closure periods, so depending on what the issue is, often in the Northeast, there are problems with whales, endangered whales. And a fishing ground will be shut down for an undetermined amount of time. And if fishermen don't work, they don't get paid. So that can cause a lot of problems for them. Traumatic events can often happen at sea, which certainly takes a toll on fishermen's well-being. Depression and anxiety are not uncommon in fishermen. In the Northeast specifically, like we said, we have a lot of one-man operations. So the feeling of isolation can be a huge, huge thing for some fishermen. And we have here in the Northeast we have this ever-changing working waterfront scenario. So a lot of folks are kind of moving because coastal New England is beautiful. So we have a lot of people moving in and buying property. So the access to fishing grounds is not as readily accessible as it used to be. So there are a lot of changes to the working waterfront. So solastalgia is an issue that a lot of fishermen experience. So this is kind of the feeling of being homesick when you've not left home. You are still exactly where you were, but everything is very different. So this also kind of increases those feelings of isolation. So talking about mental health in commercial fisheries, kind of an overall perspective, not just the Northeast here. So a lot of the literature, this was from a scoping review of, what topics are covered in commercial fishing literature. So probably not much of a surprise, mental health is the least covered topic out of all of these. A lot of the literature that has come out talks about how fishermen are susceptible to a whole range of mental health issues. A lot of them are linked to kind of the fundamental characteristics of commercial fishing. Commercial fishing it's a resource dependent occupation, and also there are a lot of uncertainties beyond the daily fishing operations. So a lot of you, I think, probably work with farmers. So you're saying, yeah, same. You're totally right. Between fishing and farming, there are so many similarities between these two professions. They're both very resource dependent communities, and they have a very high level of self-employment and income uncertainty. A lot of them live rural. They're in locations they're relatively remote to services. Access isn't as great as more urban areas. They're also very male dominated industries. So you have the social norms of masculinity. So that kind of reduces their likelihood of kind of taking mental health concerns seriously and help seeking behaviors as well. So this is a map from that same scoping review, kind of breaking things down by continent and what has been done, what topics have been covered. So this strange goldish, greenish, yellowish kind of color, that's mental health. So as you can see, again, not super covered, unfortunately. So for fishing, again, some of the mental health issues that have been covered, you have the unexpected fishing access restrictions, regulations can change all the time. Access to fishing grounds can change all the time. Climate change, of course, is changing things all the time. Large scale environmental destruction can be another problem. And these events, the mental health ramification from these events, they don't end when the event ends. There are these long-term ramifications from this, stemming from the event, but continuing on. So mental health and stress in commercial fisheries, there's a lot of different things. This graphic is from our partners in Alaska. So a lot of the stressors that they're constantly worrying about, physical injury is incredibly common in an industry like commercial fishing. Fatalities and trauma, like I've been saying, regulation changes, economic hardships. They don't have any control over catch prices, which becomes very stressful because in order to go out to haul your traps, you need to make sure you're going to make more money than you're spending going out, and that's becoming more and more of a problem. So because of these economic hardships, a lot of depression and anxiety, thoughts of suicide, and again, like I said, a very isolating occupation here in the Northeast. This industry does have one of the highest suicide rates in the US. Ag, fishing, and forestry has an average of almost 48 deaths per 100,000 fishermen. This is looking at males. There are female fishermen. It is just a very male-dominated industry. We had done a study. We were looking at the health ramifications of sleep deprivation in fisheries in Alaska, Oregon, and in Massachusetts. And we did a PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, clinical screening with all of the fishermen. And we did find that in our study that about 12% of male fishermen in the study screened positive for a PTSD diagnosis, while the national average is about 4%. So it's 3 times higher than the national average. Women were higher than the national average, but because it is a very male dominated industry, we didn't have a ton of women in our study. So the accessibility of mental health care, this is an important one. There are a ton of barriers to access. So what are some of those barriers? Time. Taking time away from fishing means they're not going to get paid. So that's very hard to do. They can't just, leave the office for an hour like I can to have an appointment. They have to miss the whole day of fishing. Um, a lot of their work is very much dictated by the weather. If the weather is good, they may have to go fishing. They might have to miss an appointment. And clinic hours don't typically jive with a fishing schedule. Nor does booking appointments far in advance. So if they book an appointment 3 months out and then that whole week it's been really windy, so they haven't gone out and their appointment's on Friday, Friday's the first nice day, they've got to go fishing. So they will miss that appointment. Stigma is also a huge thing. Sorry, I skipped cultural competency, one of the most important. So mental health care support services, they're really crucial to everyone, especially for fishermen. They have very unique challenges and stressors that they face in their profession. It's not only physically demanding, but there are long, unpredictable hours, unpredictable weather conditions, isolation, financial uncertainty. All of these things kind of lead to high stress, potential anxiety and depression, and other mental health issues for fishermen. So cultural competency of caregivers is a really huge factor in fishermen feeling comfortable and connected with their providers. The Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, where Monique is from, they do offer a great resource for both providers and their patients. So they kind of do this commercial fishing 101 with providers to give them that background information. This is what commercial fishing is about. These are, the common stressors, the common things that they go through in life. Because they, like everywhere, this is not unique to the Northeast, but provider turnover is pretty high. So you'll have folks coming to these coastal areas from, landlocked states. So they're not very familiar with commercial fishing. So kind of giving that background has been very helpful so that fishermen can connect with these providers. Stigma is also a huge barrier to mental health care in all populations. And this was something that we wanted to try and tackle. We wanted to see what we could do to sort of destigmatize seeking mental health care. So we teamed up with an organization called Man Therapy. So they are an amazing organization. I don't know if anybody has checked them out. Mantherapy.org is their website. So if anybody has seen the show Parks and Recreation, it's very much kind of that vibe. So it's this comedic take on tackling very serious issues. So you kind of have that gritty man humor. You're kind of making jokes about things. However, you are tackling these serious issues and covering these very sensitive topics. And their big emphasis is on destigmatizing mental health care. And this is an approach that the fishing community kind of suggested. Don't take things so seriously. Like that's not what sort of gets their attention. So we teamed up with them and it wound up being an awesome project. So we're not going to go through all of these, I promise. Using local vernacular was a really important part of this because we wanted to make these outreach posters or Facebook posts, social media posts, and things like that. But what we need from a marketing perspective, right? We need something that is going to grab their attention. We need something that will make them feel connected, that feels like this is a message for them, not just sort of a general message. So we talked to Man Therapy. They are out of Colorado. So again, not so much commercial fishing there. And we kind of went through everything with them. We gave them that commercial fishing 101 and they are incredible with graphic design and they did a great job with that. So we came up with 7 posters in the end. So we went back and forth several times to go through some of these, but we came up with the 7 of them. And this first poster on the left, get that mind of yours running on the flat ass calm. So this is a phrase that Northeast fishermen use to describe a very calm ocean, great day for fishing. That's exactly what you want. So that's how you want your mind to be as well. But kind of things like this, it's going to get their attention. They're going to take a second look at it. And we did sort of have our catchphrases in the beginning, and we went back to fishermen and we said, hey, which ones do you like? Which ones do you hate? And the great thing about fishermen is they are honest. They are always going to tell you what they're thinking. So we had some where they said, absolutely not. We hate this one. But that was really helpful to us because what we want is a product that connects to them, that makes them feel like it's for them, and that we understand them. And that's why we're trying to help them. So the second one, the ocean keeps you mostly sane. Man therapy can help with the rest. So of course, a lot of fishermen find the ocean calming despite, a stressful occupation. The ocean is kind of their place and that keeps them feeling calm. Don't let your brain be the only equipment you don't maintain. So fishermen constantly are checking their equipment. They need to make sure everything is in working order, everything is safe, everything is well maintained. And they will never skip that. That's an incredibly important part of their job. So we're saying, treat your brain like the rest of your equipment. You need to take care of that too. And then these are the next three that we have. Here are a few more examples of what we have. Therapy won't bring home more fish, but at least you'll bring home less baggage. Just kind of a connection to their job. Give your brain as much attention as you give your dinghy. So of course, little play on words there. So kind of the male humor. But also you have to make sure your dinghy or your skiff is in working order and working as it should so it can get you out to your boat. If you can take on the unforgiving North Atlantic, you can take on what's north of your neck. So this is kind of a common expression with Northeast fishermen. So just saying, you work in a very rough profession. If you can handle that you can handle taking care of your mental health as well. So from this, we just wanted to make sure we didn't have these posters and kind of let them sit there. So we said, how can we get these out to people? Of course, we can hang them up in harbors. We can send them out to our partners and things like that. But, what else can we do so these are more widely available? So we decided to make a website that fishermen can use, or fishing organizations or families of fishermen, and whoever would like to access it. So we kind of did an outreach and education piece to this, and this is our 7th poster. Self-help for self-sufficient self-starters. This population is very, very, very self-sufficient, and they're very proud of that. So this is kind of just playing on that. So this website, we wanted to pool resources for fishermen, of course, and for fishing families and organizations. So the website is called Lines of Support Tackling Stress at Sea. So we aimed to try to organize resources in a very accessible way, to aid fishermen or those working with or living with fishermen to find the resources that are needed, especially when it comes to the point where resources are needed. It's very stressful to try and find them. So how we organized it, our organization works from Maine down to West Virginia. So we took all those coastal states and we split things out by general mental health resources in that state, but also if there are any fishery specific mental health resources. So we have all of these links and a short description of kind of what they offer and a link right to their site from this, in hopes that if somebody is seeking help, this may help them go in the right direction to find what they're looking for. So we have some information as well. We wanted to have some data points in there. We had a few iterations of this website because at first we kind of had these really daunting facts, that I had in the beginning of this presentation, which they're real, but they're not fun, obviously. So we didn't want the website to be very negative. PTSD rates are 3 times higher than the national average. Okay, but what are we going to do about it? So we made sure to include not so much solutions, but at least helpful links. So, PTSD rates are high. How do I prevent trauma from becoming PTSD? So we have these links to help people kind of learn more about it. Same thing, high suicide rates in commercial fishermen. How can I help someone in a crisis? What do I do if I'm in a crisis? So we wanted to make sure we offered solutions as well. So this QR code does go to that website. I can also type it in the chat in a little bit. So the point of kind of making this website is to have a simple presentation of the materials. Again, like I said earlier, it can be really daunting if you're at the point where you need resources, and, just a simple Google search kind of just makes you very, very more anxious than you may be already. Just trying to figure out, what's right for me, where can I go, what's local to me, who's going to understand, what I'm going through. Um, our hope is to work on destigmatizing help-seeking behaviors. Um, I think not unique to fishing for sure, but especially a lot of male-dominated industries, there's still a lot of stigma surrounding these help-seeking behaviors. So we're trying to work on that destigmatization and using the local language, local vernacular, and metaphors to make relatable and relevant messages is really important. The fishermen that we got feedback from really seemed to like that we involve them in this process. I'm not a commercial fisherman. I work with them, but I am not a commercial fisherman. So they always have certainly better feedback than I do. So I think they like being included in things that are geared towards them for sure. So we think that this is kind of taking steps in the right direction to look at the gap that we have in mental health resources for commercial fishermen. More needs to be done, of course. There are some fishery specific mental health resources, but there aren't a ton. As with everything, we can always do more. And I think we're kind of chipping away at that block and getting closer to where we need to be. So does anybody have any questions? I can type the website in the chat. I think I
Yeah,
have.
I posted it once, but there's been lots of posts after that, so feel free to go ahead and post that in there.
Okay.
Mandy, I'm from Missouri, so I am one of those landlocked states where I don't see any of this except like when my husband makes me watch like Wicked Tuna or one of
Right.
those other shows. And when you first started presenting, all those shows came back to me, and I'm thinking, I feel like this is one of the most difficult career choices that somebody could make because it's so dangerous. Just looking as a viewer on the outside, sometimes these guys are isolated for months at a time. They'll go out and they won't come back till the boat's filled up. So they're always cold and wet. They're with the same 5 to 7 guys the entire time. You're try not to get hit by a trap or get, sometimes like thrown overboard. I'm thinking, how in the world do they keep it right up here? Like it has got to be so difficult to just get up every morning and or like when you have to go back out, like you take your break whenever that is and say, okay, it's time for me to go back out 3 months. Like I would just be like, oh God, why am I doing this job is what I would think. So do you hear that a lot from the fishermen? Like, are they excited to go back out when it's time? Or is it, this is all I know how to do. So, like a lot of our farmers, it's all I know how to do. So that's why I do it.
I think fishing, and somebody actually just put the comment in the chat too. Fishing very much parallels farming. Yes, it is a job, but it's also I think fishermen, like farmers, sort of view it as more of a lifestyle. It's not, it's hard, it's grueling work, it's demanding physically, mentally. It's a hard job, but it is what they want to do. You know what I
Okay.
mean? If
I
that
would
makes
think you would
sense.
have to want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean there are some I see hi Deb. I see Deb on here. Massachusetts has a great organization, Fishing Partnership Support Services. They offer all kinds of services for fishermen. So they are tackling a lot of these problems, and they have community health navigators, and they have been wildly successful with helping fishermen find the resources they need, get signed up for health insurance if they don't have it, and things like that. So if we could move FPSS to all coastal states, I would love it.
Well,
Karen
you can
had a
always feel
question in
free
the
to reach
chat.
out to us for what we've done here, and we'll be happy to share, how we've grown and what it is to serve our communities. And to answer your question, Carrie, about fishermen, that's in their blood. It's like generational. They love it.
I can
And
I can completely understand that
yeah.
because you look out and see how hard we work every day, and we bring in very little in the cattle farming industry because we're one of those mid-sized farms who we don't actually make any money. We just, for some reason, love the work. Mandy, Karen had a question. She said, are there better government supports for fishing and fishermen in Europe and the Nordic nation based incomes, basic income stipends, government support for prices? Does that make sense?
So I'm not 100% sure about catch prices, but I know we had an international meeting for commercial fishing safety and health research back in January, and we were talking from some folks in Finland and Denmark. And we were saying, we're trying to tackle these mental health issues, like how do we get these resources to fishermen? How do we get them fishery specific? And some of our colleagues in Europe, because we were like, what are you doing? What's working for you? And they just said we don't have mental health problems, but they also have these really great like apprenticeship programs as well, where they kind of take on fishermen, they pay them a salary to sort of train them, but they go through a ton of safety training, but it's almost like an undergraduate degree in fishing or something, because it's sort of the purpose of it is to weed out people that are just, fishing is not for them.
Mhm.
And they're compensated well. I don't know exactly how catch prices work, but I know here, fishermen don't have any control over it. And then if their fishing grounds are shut down, there's nothing they can do about it. They don't get to collect unemployment from that. So I think I think Europe kind of has it figured out a little bit better in terms of taking care of their fishermen. Um, but I am sure, I mean, they still have a lot of the same hazards, of course, especially physically, as our fishermen do.
Yeah. The other question was, what about support services through unions and fishing collectives?
So I'm not sure, Deb, are there unions or no
No,
union?
I mean, New Bedford used to have a union a long time ago. There are no unions. I mean, we hope to offer that support, to our local fishermen in the four ports that we serve, but no,
Yeah.
they don't have the support
Hello.
or
Okay.
unions that we get to
No,
have.
another change in plan. Are you okay?
Yeah, just have cold allergies, I don't know.
Oh, Sarah and I were there. It's the
Hey, Laura, I don't have the ability to mute
Yes,
them.
I just muted them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if anybody else has any questions for Mandy, feel free to unmute and go ahead and ask her anything. Mandy, I know we had a lot in the chat. Like when you had those posters up,
Mhm.
like people were going crazy in the chat with how much they loved those. I think speaking in industries lingo is the very first step to getting them to trust you and like listen to what you have to offer. So I think you guys did an exceptional job on that. Are those on the website, like where people can go back and look at those?
They are. So if you go to that website that's in the chat, if you just scroll down to the bottom, it's the anycenter.org/man therapy. Scroll to the bottom and you can download them all.
Awesome. We will send out your contact information, but if you'll put your email address in the chat, people are gonna copy and paste it immediately to ask you questions. One last call for Mandy before we move on. Okay, so there's one more question in the chat. Oh, what is wrong with the USA picture for fishermen? There's no worker organizations and no lobby collectives. Is it like that in Canada?
I'm not sure about Canada. I think there's and I mean I think we see this in farming too, where it just seems like folks in these two professions are often kind of made to be the bad guy. So then kind of the public view is like a negative one. So sometimes the public is led to believe fishermen are bad because they're killing all of the fish. But sustainable that's what fishermen want, is sustainable fishing. Nobody wants to overfish so that they're completely out of business. But I think sometimes it sort of gets twisted in the media, and that's sort of what flies through, is sort of the negative
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. All right. We will let you go ahead and put your contact email in the chat. And then you guys feel free, if you have a question that comes up, just go ahead and you can direct message Mandy, or just go ahead and put it in the chat so that everybody can see it. It's completely up to you if you feel comfortable. But Mandy, we want to thank you coming on and giving us an update. We really I feel like I enjoyed that a lot, like seeing how far it's gone since you came a couple years ago. And I think fishery and forestry are often forgotten about that they are in agriculture because it's just not the norm, I guess, of what people do. But I mean, they're getting a product just like the rest of us are, delivering a product
Right.
to the stores, to everybody. But yeah, it's quite interesting to me to see that type of the other side of agriculture, because like I said, being in Missouri, I get like nil of that. All right, let me make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat here. All right, so our next speaker is Miss Lacey Singleton. Lacey and I actually met on social media and through a past speaker that we had I think maybe last fall, Ag Women Connect. And Lacey's going to bring us the other side of farming. It's going to be more of the ranching style, because many of our ranchers are also in the Western world. So ranchers, up north, southwest, they do a lot of their chores on horseback. And they're also a lot in the rodeo. And we all know by coming to these meetings that many of our farmers and ranchers wind down or numb what's going on with alcohol. So Lacey has taken a huge leap forward in getting into that world and saying, you know what, we don't have to live this way. This is not the thing that we need to choose to help us function or cope. And she has created an organization like brand spanking new, like I want to say January. We'll let her touch on that, called Sober Cowboy. So Lacey, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then just give a little bit of background about how Sober Cowboy became about, what's the purpose behind it, and then you can just expand.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. So I'm going to share, let's see here, my website, and I'm going to reference it as we go along. Can everybody see that now? Are we all good?
Yep, everything looks good, Lacey.
Okay, awesome. So yes, you were correct. Sober Cowboy was launched January 25th of this year. So very fresh and new. However, it feels like a lifetime of work in the meantime. But it has been so humbling, and I'm so full of gratitude for being able to be in this space. So Sober Cowboy is a nonprofit organization, and most importantly, community that is growing each and every day. But the goals that we have is to make it more acceptable and common to talk about our feelings and those things that we are dealing with on the day-to-day for cowboys and ranchers in the Western community, because that isn't something that's talked about, similarly to many of these jobs that, men are working very hard, and women too, especially in this industry. But and a lot of the time we aren't talking about that, and it's not been something that growing up was pushed, like, hey, you need to talk about how you're feeling and deal with these traumas and issues that we're having. So yeah, our mission is just to create that community, and it's based on, of course, our faith, having healthy outlets instead of those negative ones. So replacing maybe drinking a 6 or 12 pack after a long day of our ranching or rodeo or whatever it is that these guys and girls are doing, with positive resources instead. And of course, building a community around each other. So a lot of recovery is based on community. It's very important. And, looking around when this was being started and being thought about, there isn't much of a community in the Western industry for recovery. It's not talked about. If you are sober, if you are struggling with addiction, it's not readily available. Of course, there are resources for almost every group out there, of course, as far as addiction, recovery, suicide, mental health, all of that. But there wasn't something specific for the Western industry, cowboys, ranchers, those kind of lines of work. And so I saw that as a need, and now we are, of course, stepping in to hopefully be there for them. Much like it is in our blood, the Western industry and the cowboy way of life, they like to stick with their own. We like to be around similar thinking people, of course, and, cowboys usually hang out with other cowboys. So creating that community that is cowboy based and the Western way of life, including that into our recovery process, is very important and has been amazing so far, the people that have come out. So some of our goals for this year are, of course, just to get this thing out there like that. It's so new. We're almost 6 months in. And so I just want people to know about it. That way, if this comes up in their life or when this comes up in their life, they know where to go. They say, oh, I remember meeting that girl or seeing about Sober Cowboy somewhere, and I know that she'll have resources and that community will be there for me. So a couple things that we are doing is, of course, we have a list of resources, and these are, of course, available. I mostly put it so that anybody anywhere can find what they need. I am in Southern Colorado, so of course I have the local resources here, but I want to provide to those that, maybe are very rural and can't get to a meeting. There are online options. We actually we've done 2 so far, and I'm doing 1 a month, but we are doing our own Sober Cowboy meeting, and that's been so amazing. I've had people join every time and talk and share, and it's just been a great little group to get this thing started and have people feel comfortable with others that are going through the same thing. That's a huge part of it. So we do our own meetings. There's, of course, online meetings for both NA and AA that are available. Of course, there's lots of other resources on here, either that have helped me or that have stepped in and said, hey, I want to be a resource for you. So that is there. I do, of course, offer Bible study stuff. So if somebody had questions or wanted help with that, there's blog posts on here for that. And then another huge part of Sober Cowboy is going to be our Sober Cowboy stories. So again, with the connection and getting people to feel like they're not alone. I want to have different options as far as, like, I have my story on here, my dad's story, which I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Here's Bryce, and he is a PRCA bull rider. Mase is an actor and a cowboy. So all of these people have different stories, and other people might relate to that in the same way and say, oh, well, I connect to this guy and this is how he got through it, so I'm going to try that. So highlighting other people's success stories is very important for Sober Cowboy and what we are trying to promote. Another important thing for us and being sober is going to be the healthy cowboy side of things. So getting in the gym, finding your physical release, and taking care of not only your mental health, but your body as well, because they do go hand in hand. So if you feel good, you play good. And we want to promote that for rodeo athletes, the same as a basketball player or a baseball player would do. We are involved in lots of events. So again, with the networking and promotion, just being out in the community and making it available and making people know about it. So these are just some of the upcoming events that we have going on. We actually are putting on our own fundraising event, a bull riding. So that's going to be fun here later this month in a couple weeks. But just being out in the community and trying to get this to as many people as possible. So a little bit about my backstory and why this all came about, and how did this happen? So I've always had a passion for recovery, especially with addiction, obviously, because my dad has been an addict my whole life. So that's always been very important to me. And I've had this love for, like, kids that are dealing with incarcerated parents and struggling with addiction. So when I first went to go to college, I was going for psychology, and my goal was to go to college, come back home, and open a like child's home or, kids after school program, something for those with incarcerated parents or parents that are absent due to addiction. So, of course, doesn't always go the way that you plan and your plans change. So I decided that I didn't want to be in school for that long to get my master's and everything in psychology. So I went the business route instead, which has been amazing because I am an entrepreneur and have, a few irons in the fire as far as business goes. And this is the biggest and best one yet. So I got through college and those dreams have obviously changed. And now I finally know how this all ties together as far as what I'm supposed to be doing. So I struggled with alcohol dependence myself. When my dad left us my freshman year of high school, I believe, obviously the mental health issues there were huge. And so I learned, unfortunately, to rely on numbing that pain and pushing those feelings down, repressing them via using alcohol. So starting in high school all the way through college, and then even after college, I was, daily getting drunk and using that to like get rid of those feelings. I don't want to deal with it. And so then I had a pretty bad breakup and went through all of that process. And it was, getting even worse where I was doing this daily and all the time I was just drunk. And so finally I came to the realization, like, I need to stop doing this, that something's got to change. I've got to find a way to heal through all of this. And so that heartbreak led to me discovering so much more trauma that was under there. And so, of course, after, practicing that and going through my own recovery process, a couple of years later, it led to Sober Cowboy and, the realization that this doesn't exist for people like me. This isn't acceptable for people like me. So creating that and bringing that to this industry is a very important thing for me, and obviously what led to Sober Cowboy and all that we are about. So let's see here. I already talked about all of that. Oh, so I'm going to read some statistics, and I don't want to bore you guys, but in 2022, 29.5 million Americans struggled with alcohol use disorder. At an even larger number, 48.7 million people had a substance abuse disorder, and 8 million people struggled with both at the same time. Almost 1 in 4 adults reported a mental illness disorder, and thoughts of suicide swept the minds of 13.2 million people in America. These, of course, are just the documented cases. So that being said, of course, how many of those are in the Western industry, or how many of those that don't report those feelings and issues are in the Western industry? So trying to make that more open and obviously be available to that it's okay to talk about it and that we can recover together in the cowboy world and the Western industry to keep it alive for generations to come is the biggest push behind Sober Cowboy. So I'm just going to stop talking now because I can be talking forever and open it up to discussion and questions, and I'll do my best to answer. I'd love to hear from you guys what you think and what questions you have. So
Lacey, do you want to touch just a little bit more, like, because you talked a lot about community. What about those monthly meetings? You want to talk and just kind of share what they're about and since I attended one, I think they're very important with helping people stay on track.
Yes, ma'am. So in recovery, and I didn't personally do any AA meetings or anything like that, but I know that for a lot of people, this is super important. And so I've seen it firsthand with some of my friends since I've started Sober Cowboy, and they're maybe interested in starting this process of becoming sober in a world that is consumed by, alcohol consumption or drugs or whatever it may be. And so for them to say, I'm going to go to a meeting, and to go by yourself is kind of strange, right? So I said, well, I'm just going to start doing meetings. And so since I didn't ever go to any myself, I started going to some and learning the ropes and figuring out what we're doing in AA, and actually Celebrate Recovery is the one that I worked with the most. And I actually work from their book and worksheets to do our meetings, but I decided to start doing meetings myself. for the sober cowboy community. And so I know that there's other like-minded people in those meetings, and it is a very comfortable place. It has turned into, in just 2 short months, it's turned into like a little family that's all going through the same stuff, maybe in a little bit different ways, but we do follow a recovery process as far as the steps go. But I try to incorporate, life as we're having it and relate it back to, what's going on in your day to day with these animals and agriculture and ranching or rodeo. So yeah, we're doing the life group meetings and we are following the steps, but it's a little bit more relaxed, I would say, than like a traditional AA setting.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to AA, but even me as an outsider coming in, I could feel just the closeness and trust and vulnerability within that group. You also have something else that I think is really important. You have a group me community where it's an app that anybody can get on. Maybe they can share some great things that's going on in their life to just uplift everybody else. But also, I think what you're using it for is if anybody's struggling at any given moment, they can get on that app. It's live and it gives you a notification on your phone. So if you are struggling, anybody else within that group can come on and answer and get them through that moment of struggle.
Yes, and I've since doing that, which this last meeting was the first I introduced the group chat, but it's somewhere where like that, if somebody's having a horrible day, they throw it in there maybe that they need help. They need somebody to help them through that, minute or whatever it is. Recovery is one day at a time, 1 minute at a time. It's one to the next. And we might mess up in this moment, but guess what? We get to start over right here. And we still have these people behind us that have also been in that position and are going to help us through it. So I think that the community is the most important part of this, and it has been since day one. And the fact that that is growing and that is available, I have some amazing people that reached out to me, through this, and they've become great friends. And that's who, is in that group. And they maybe haven't even been sober very long, but they're willing to help the next guy that's coming through. And that's a part, of the 12 steps, is helping others once you get towards the end and figure out what you're doing. But that's been amazing. And to see, I have one guy in particular that had messaged me back at the beginning of April, and he's struggling with it. And he tried, and then he fell off, and then he tried again, and he fell off. And he says, he messages me one day and says, "Can I try again? When is the next meeting?" And I'm like, "Yes, and it's tonight." So he got on that meeting, and we have him at, I believe today is day 8 of sobriety. So those are the things, the wins that this community is uplifting and helping along. Because if that guy in particular had been not with this community, he had some stuff come up this week that was super hard. And I don't know that he would have been able to get through that day without having a drink or doing whatever else he does. So, the community aspect of it is so important, and knowing that there's other cowboys out there like you, so you don't have to feel ashamed to share and to need help, is so very important. And I'm feeling so blessed about this community. And yes, in particular, the group chat, because they're rocking in there. They're sharing their gratitude every day. They're sharing their wins, their struggles, all of it. And I'm just so proud of them and feeling super grateful. So.
Yeah, I would agree. Lacey, I grew up in the Western rodeo world, and you're talking about you're going to a lot of those events and you're setting up your booth. Me going to rodeos or any type of timed event, like everybody has a plastic cup in their hand and they're drinking. Do you ever get any like pushback or anything like that when you're at those events promoting being sober in a basically unsober world?
Yes, absolutely. My last event was in Miles City at the Buck and Horse Sale, which is, of course, Cowboy Mardi Gras. So it is a wild time, and there's tons of drinking and crazy people running around all over the place. So working there, that was my first real event having like a booth. But there was lots of comments of sober cowboy. You never hear that in the same sentence, and so my response is usually, well, you're looking at one. And so those people like that, even that are, kind of pushing it away, I know that if something did come up in their life, because whether you are the person struggling with addiction or you're supporting somebody that's struggling with addiction, it's all relative and it's all important to have this community behind you. So if that ever comes up in their life, I know that because they said that, they'll remember it to know that they have somewhere to go if that ever comes up with them, which most of the time, if they are saying something like this, it already is present in their life. They just haven't come to the realization that they need to figure it out yet.
Yeah, emoji, both hands up. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Um, Lacey, Lisa wants to know, can you give us just a little bit more of your background, like on rodeo ranching and agriculture? Like, did you grow up in this? Is it something new for you?
Yeah, so I did grow up, obviously being in Southern Colorado, the West is very alive. And growing up, we always had horses, a few cattle. We showed horses most of my life. I, of course, did 4-H and all of that fun stuff when I was a kid. And we actually had a pretty good little operation of, nothing huge at all, but just enough cows to get the family their beef for the year or whatever the case, friends and family. So my dad and I, we're doing that together, and that's what created that love. I love cattle. I love ranching. Eventually I'll have my own setup one day, but um and horses, of course, and the horse showing part of it. So I didn't ever rodeo or anything like that, but it's always been, one of my greatest loves is the Western industry and ranching and agriculture as well. So when my dad did leave, he, of course, left. I had a whole group of cattle going and my horses and everything else. So kind of left that on us. And it's just my mom, my brother, and I. And, I was 14. My brother's 5 years younger than me. And so that was a lot for us to handle on our own. So, of course, when those cattle were done, that was kind of the end of that. And so that was sort of stripped from me in a way. And when somebody asks me what's the best time of your life, like what's your happiest time, I always resort back to when my dad and I got to go and ride through our pasture of cows and we're doing all of those things. So that's always been the greatest time to me, my greatest love. So yes, I have been in the Western industry for my whole life.
Yeah. Amy said those stories that you share, like those personal stories and testimonies, are very critical. How did you get or identify those?
Honestly, since the day this started, I have been receiving messages, either that, somebody will message me and say, I'm struggling with this, or somebody will message me and say, I've been sober for X amount of time. I want to be a part of it. So just building friendships through this. And again, that community is so important. I do a lot of outreach to people that I find via social media or, friends of friends. So they just come along usually, whether I'm looking for them or they're looking for me, they've come along that way.
Okay. Karen wants to know, how do you identify sober options for sober support gatherings and resources for rehab? Second part of that is, can people tell you about meeting options and where, and then have you list them on their website?
Yeah, absolutely. The more resource that can be available for people out there, the better. So feel free to take anything that I have, the link to my website or meetings. You're more than welcome to share that. So as far as the sober options for gatherings, this is something that we have to learn in our recovery. Like when I first started, I would still go to the bars and stuff with my friends, but I'm having a soda water. So encouraging that kind of behavior instead of, having to have a beer. And we're super lucky right now. There's a big sober movement going on. And so a lot of these beer companies and alcohol companies are coming out with an NA option. So actually at our event that I'm putting on here in a couple of weeks, I had a local liquor store be gracious enough to donate a bunch of NA beer to us. So we're going to offer that to the community and show them like, hey, we can still enjoy having a beer after branding or having a beer at this rodeo, but it doesn't have to be to get drunk. So I also try to do a monthly mocktail, which I definitely don't get to it monthly, but having other fun options like that, because a lot of it is also routine of having a drink in your hand. And so still having a fun, cute, or not cute, of course, for the cowboys, but having some kind of drink that is, still maybe looks that way so that we don't have to have the conversation right away. And then also just the motion of taking a drink to your face when you're in a social gathering is very important as far as the routine goes. So just trying to promote the NA options and show them that it's okay, that we don't have to get drunk or have beers. We can still go out with our friends and have a good time. That's the whole thing of being a sober person in general. So just learning the tips, tricks, and tools to be able to do that. And of course, we talk about that in our meetings. And then social media is a very huge part of all of this on Instagram. I try to do, like that mocktails, tips and tricks, inspirational stuff. So it's all a learning curve, but I know that people can do it if they have the right community behind them. So it all kind of comes together in that community.
There is lots of comments that I want you to read once we're done in here. People commending you and doing wonderful things. Is there anybody that wants to open up their mic and ask Lacey any questions? And also we want to put your email or contact information in the chat because I saw that there was somebody who wants to connect with you as well.
Yes. Let's see here. It is all right there, but I'll write it in the chat as well.
Yes. And somebody had just messaged that they had to miss part of it. So we're really happy that we record it. So usually within 24 hours, these meetings are on YouTube so that you can go back and rewatch, or if you find someone that needs either one of these projects, programs, organizations, you can pass that on to them with all the contact information so that they can then get in touch with like Man Therapy or our Sober Cowboy. So we have lots of comments, lots of thank yous for sharing. Great organization. Yeah, so Mandy says same thing. I would love to see something just like this for fishermen.
Yes, it is definitely needed.
All right, I think that's all that I see in the chat there. And then per usual, we'll go ahead and send out an email within 24 hours with all the speakers' information, contacts, links to the YouTube video. And if you guys ever have any questions, you can just go ahead and you can email myself at my AgriSafe email. And then also our social media, I just want to reiterate this every meeting that we have. Everybody who has a project or organization that works in the mental health industry, we want to share that on our AgriStress page. So you can post to it yourself, and then one of us just goes on and approves it. Or if you send me something like, hey, we've got this big thing coming up, or this is something new, we really trying to promote this, send it to me, or take my email and just sign me up for your newsletter. Because if I get it in my inbox, I will immediately take it and I'll schedule it on our AgriStress page, because we don't ever want this to be a one and done thing. One of the biggest concepts that we have is collaboration. We're all working towards the same goal, so why don't we work together? So we want to definitely help you promote everything that you're doing within your organization. So Lacey, we want to thank you for coming on today. I knew as soon as I saw you on Instagram, I was like, I have to have her come on here, because the Western world is not something that we've touched on, but it's very much still a part of our agriculture community. And we talk a lot about numbing with alcohol. So it was very nice to have you on here. So we will leave everything up for just a minute if anybody would like to go through the chat again, and then just look for that email within 24 hours. We'll get you all the information that you need, and just keep sharing. I'm so excited. Like, I was watching the whole participant thing the whole time. We have broken a record for this meeting. We reached 100 live participants, which is the highest. I think last month was, 97, something like that. So I take a lot of pride in you guys coming every month and just seeing who we have next to share. So thank you for continuing on and supporting us. So All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a fabulous Wednesday.
Thank you.